Peace, love, and light, family. What's going on? Hey, what's going on, family? What's going on, everybody? What's going on? Peace, 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 family. Peace, 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 peace to the family. 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 We're just waiting for the good doctor to come back in. And then we're gonna talk. We talking about sex, baby. Let's talk about you and me. Yeah, we talking about all that. Yeah. We're gonna get a little raunchy, just a little bit, not a lot. We're still midday. Was it 5 o'clock? Oh, good gosh, right in the middle of the day. But I guess it's happy hour somewhere. Oh, how's everybody feeling today? Did everybody enjoy the first half of the conversation? How'd y'all feel about the first half of the conversation? If you didn't see it, it's on my IG Live. If you want to go ahead and tap in. How did everybody feel about the first half of the conversation? Was y'all enjoying the talk? Then we talked about some sensitive things. Do I really have to buy it like a whole new lighter? God damn it. Yeah, it's not my aunt. No, it's not my aunt. Yeah. Oh well, Ash, we was talking about a couple of different things. We was talking about colorism in the Latin community. Tiffany is from Costa Rica. She lives in Costa Rica. She's a clinical. Excuse me. I'm gonna get her exact title. She is a clinical social worker and also a sexologist. Hey, Tiff is back in the building. So yeah, we was talking about, I'll just give people a brief rundown of what we were talking about. Some people came in late. We were talking about colorism and the Latin American community, in the Black community. We were talking about racism, like a kind of oppressive racism. We were also talking about micro racism. We were talking about Tiffany and I went to the same middle and high school, so we have a lot of the same experiences. And we were talking about sex. We were talking about sexuality, and now we're going to talk about sex. We talked about some of the pros and cons of the lockdown from COVID and all that. So now that people are having a lot more time to be at home and explore their sexualities and maybe try things that they didn't try before, well, first off, do you talk to just individuals or do you talk to couples?
No, so I do individuals, couples, and groups.
Okay. So from any one of those, from couples, individual groups, have you just like, I mean, I'm pretty sure you've heard some pretty naughty things. Has there been like anything specifically that's like, I don't know, are people like more willing to be more loose with their sexuality because they're at home with their partners more?
So I got to be honest with you. I actually have had a break of my practice in the past few months. So this entire pandemic, I haven't actually practiced, which is interesting because I feel like a lot of folks really need therapy at this moment.
Yes.
But no, so I would be lying if I said, yes, they've been doing this more or doing that more. No, I have not practiced. And I think it's been good for my own mental health to not have to carry someone else's doing this whole thing. Because the pandemic has been hard, but also, everything that's going on with the Black Lives Matter movement has been really tough on mental health, I think. And so, I sort of am just reserving my energy for when things have calmed down a little bit more. But, just speaking from working with folks outside of a pandemic and speaking about folks who are, suddenly, I don't know, for one reason or another are at home more, or, the dynamics of the day-to-day change. And so now they have to spend more time with their partners. Yes, being together longer, being with your partner for many more hours, definitely can be an agent to change within the sexuality dynamic, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, I've worked with many couples who have a very difficult time with being creative, have a very difficult time with leaving the routine. And that's one of the main reasons folks come to sex therapy, is because they want to talk about all of the resentments, all of the routines, all of the, you know, victim blaming, all of these things that happen within a relationship that are just absolute dead ends when it comes to sexuality. If you're not having a good relationship, just like in general, or at least actively trying to work through some of the issues within your partnership, then you're going to have a terrible sexuality, because they go hand in hand. And it's sort of a myth most of the time. And I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but most of the time, if a relationship is suffering, the sexual part is also suffering. It's not like, oh, we're having great sex, but we can't agree on anything. That's very Hollywood like where you're like, you know, like Mr. and Mrs. Smith, for example. You're like having a terrible time, but your sex is amazing. That usually tends to not really happen.
Yeah, it doesn't. It doesn't. I am actually one of those few people that actually did happen to. I had an ex. She's not gonna ever say. I had an ex. I'm not gonna say by the name. I had an ex, and we just did not get along on anything. I mean, everything was an argument. I'm not gonna blame the blame on her. I'm gonna blame the blame on myself. It was a whole mix of things. But our sex was amazing, and it was so toxic because we could not agree on anything. You know, and I will take some of the, you know what? I don't care. I will take some of the blame on this. Unfortunately, I was dealing with her when I was making I call it my transition into consciousness, because I had literally, I transitioned into consciousness. I had been feel like, oh my God, the veil has been lifted. I immediately turned vegetarian. I became super pro-black. I became really spiritual. I started to get into all these books, and she kind of just had to like see this guy that she knew literally make a 360 in front of her eyes. Like, I literally turned into a different person in front of her eyes. The sex is always great though. Goodness gracious, sex was amazing. But us talking, having a conversation, we probably couldn't go more than 15 minutes without just like,
Yeah. Imagine that. And like, you know, sex can be great, but sex isn't everything. And people who know that are people who are in relationships that like, sex was probably once great, but then you try to have a relationship with someone, you're like, well, damn, I need a little bit more than just like good sex. Like that's not a thing. And, you know, and I think about how many couples I've worked with that everything else was fine when they came in. They're like, oh yeah, like things are great between us as a couple, but we just need help with the sex. Like the sex is really the only thing that's like really not good. Either, you know, like, you know, erectile dysfunction or this or that. It could be a number of things.
Yeah.
And just by a few probing questions, I would find out that it isn't just the sex. Sex is always usually just a symptom of something else that's going on. Like if the sex is bad or if the sex isn't working, it's because communication is off. It's because negotiation practices aren't really good. It's because some person in the relationship feels like much more of the weight of the relationship, feels like there's more responsibility from this person. And so I think that, you know, when sex is good, it's good.
Yeah.
But when sex is bad, you can feel it just absolutely permeating all other areas of the relationship.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Would you, so as a therapist, would you recommend porn? Would that be something that you would like, you know, a couple comes in, like, you know, everything is good, you know, but when it comes to sex, they just kind of missing each other a bit. Do you ever recommend porn, or do you feel from your experience, is porn able to help, or has it taken away from a couple's sexual experience? Because, you know, when you watch porn, you kind of get this, like you said, this grandiose, like this Mr. and Mrs. Smith, like, Oh, I'm gonna
Mm-hmm.
come in, babe, boom, boom, boom. That's porn. It's an act. That's what they're supposed to do. It's a fantasy. It's not reality. So
Mm-hmm.
have you suggested porn, and have you seen porn affected in a positive or a negative way?
So I think that that's a great question because even within the sexuality community, professionals are just, experts are sort of torn on the role of porn within a relationship. Um, for one, I'm a big advocate for porn. I love porn. I think porn is great. Why do I think that? I think that because when we demonize porn, we tend to think of it how it was in the 70s. We tend to think it's all, women being subjugated, man dominant, and like violence and all of these things. Porn is so much more than we imagine nowadays. Whatever you can think of that you like,
Somebody's doing
there's
it.
a porn for in it. It's already exists. You don't have to like come up with how you can give yourself pleasure. It's already there,
Yeah.
accessible.
Yeah.
Um, and there's so many, people of color making great porn. There's so many great queer people making porn. There's so many women making porn. And so, I really think that if we open our eyes to porn as a tool for revamping sexuality with boundaries,
Mm.
with communication, then I think that it can be a really wonderful tool. So yes, I have recommended for my clients, and I part of me doing this is me being a professional and me actually knowing the work that I do, and so I wouldn't recommend it to everyone, and I wouldn't just say that willy-nilly like, oh yeah, go watch porn together, it's fine. No, because again, there's always a good side or bad side. There's always a lot of things to consider. And so, one of the bad sides can be that porn, depending on the porn that you're watching, can create these very false ideas of what sex would look like,
Yes.
of what my partner should look like, right? So if my partner doesn't look like this, then I'm not going to be turned on. Or if they don't do this, then I don't like it.
Mm.
But, I think the process of choosing porn together is
Mm-hmm.
something that can be really wonderful for a couple. Like, hey, this is what I like. Do you like this? Or, this is what I don't really like this, but maybe we can try it if you're really into it. It opens up the conversation of what is my pleasure? Because the biggest culprit of bad sex and a bad relationship is non-communication. So folks don't tell their partner, I like this or I like that, because they're embarrassed, because there's shame, because there's all kinds of things. And so if there is, sort of a very conscious attempt at using porn as a tool to be able to discover your partner's likes, dislikes, your partner's pleasure spots, your partner's erogenous zones, your partner's just mental capacity to fantasize, to have imagination that is sexual, I think that it can be really, really rich.
Mm. I am not a therapist, but I agree with that. I agree with that. I absolutely agree with that. I think in my relationships, we haven't really, porn has been a part of it. It hasn't been necessarily something that's been like always suggested, but when it has been in there, it's always been a great tool. Because I feel like kind of like going back just to have discernment, like
Mhm.
we know that we're looking at a fantasy. We're looking at a portrayal of porn. So it's just like, oh well, I can do that. I can take that. Or I can use that for my repertoire. But we're still gonna do our own thing
Yes.
in our way that because we are us and they are them. So we're
Hmm.
not performing for a camera. We're not performing for an audience. We're performing for each other. So that
Yeah.
should always be different. Um, the only, I don't want to say negative thing, but I'm pretty sure you've seen the studies. If you overindulge in porn, like kind of if you overindulge in anything else, have you heard that it creates kind of like gray spots in in your brain, and that for some people, I have not personally experienced this. For some people that watch porn, their stimulation kind of goes down. So like they have to keep up in the ante. So it's like, all right, guy and girl. All right, then two guys and one girl. All right, three guys and one girl. All right, gangbang. All right, orgy. All right, in the woods with an orgy
Hmm.
with fire around. Like you just have to keep upping the ante and keep going. Has that aspect of porn come to affect any of your couples or clients or single patients that you see in a negative way?
You know, I think that you're making a great point because, you know, that's what they say porn does, right? So, you know, porn has the potential, and like you said, like anything, it has the potential to desensitize us to a point where real life interactions with a partner may not seem as pleasurable, right? So I think that this is a real thing. This has been studied, and the things that I talk about are not things that I just sort of pulled out of my ass. Like, these are things that I've either read, that have, you know, have studies backing them up, that have peer-reviewed studies, that are folks who are doing the work. And so, you know, pornography, if not used with moderation, and moderation is subjective, right? Because what's moderate for me may not be moderate for you. Right. So it really depends. I think it's a fine line, but it's a line that is dictated by what? If you're porn watching, the same as if you're, I don't know, anything really, if you're gambling, if your porn watching is getting in the way of your real life relationship, if it's getting in the way of real human connection, if it's getting in the way in which you are not able to reach a certain level of pleasure, if you're not able to reach a certain level of, you know, peak, if it's something that you are canceling events for, if you are, you know, spending all your time at home watching porn, if it is causing you anxiety, if it's causing you negative feelings, that's a time to be like, all right, that's too much. I'm gonna reel it back. And that's why folks like me exist, because I work with people like that, right? So that's my job, you know, to be able to get to a point in which you can negotiate porn use with yourself, with your partner, in a way that feels healthy to both of you. And again, healthy is very subjective. But it's something that if it's getting in the way of you living your life, or it's changing your life as you had sort of put it together in a negative way, that's when you got to question and be like, okay, this is probably not for the best.
So as we start to wind it down, I want to say something from a man's perspective. I feel like because it's, I don't want to say it's weird, but a lot of my male friends or woman friends, they actually come to me and talk about sex and talk about their sex life and stuff. And what I have noticed is I have a lot of woman friends, have a lot of lady friends, is that I don't think men ask enough questions. They assume maybe from porn, or they assume from a previous relationship that they can have sex with a woman the same way. And I feel like, just like any person, you have to approach a person a different way because they are a different entity, they are a different energy. You have to approach sex with a woman in a different way. Have you seen in your experience that the issues have come because men they don't ask questions, they just assume like, well, I guess I got a big dick, so she's gonna like it. And, you know, has that been something that has been relevant in your experience?
Yeah, you know, what I want to really reiterate from what you said is that every experience is different, right? Every person is different. So even you saying from a man's opinion or from a man's experience, you are not every black man. You are not every cis man. You are not every heterosexual man. You know, people have varying experiences of sexuality, which is why there's a varying experience of pornography, because we don't all like the same thing. So I think that in order for any physical relationship, sexual relationship to occur, there needs to be communication.
Yes.
And there's communication that's verbal, nonverbal. There's communication that happens with your eyes, with your hands, with your mouth, all of these things. But the same things that I like, a friend of mine who's also cis, you know, who has a vagina, might not like. Exactly. You know, and so to assume like, oh yeah, like women are different than men because they have vaginas, you know, that's definitely such a generalization, because Not all women like penetration. Not all women like to get oral sex. Not all women like, and so I'm sure there are many things that we can say about, you know, people who have penises. Not all people with penises like to get their penis sucked, for example.
Sure.
And so I think it's imperative to just have conversations in which you say, this is what I like. What do you like? And instead of assuming we are going to like the same things. And, you know, I think it's about not following a script. As humans, we tend to just follow this script, you know,
Yeah.
and once you become more conscious, you realize I don't have to follow the script. And so you can do other things. Right. And so that applies to sexuality as well. You don't have to follow the script of what you have seen in porn that you're supposed to like, because I've had clients, you know, come to me and say like, oh, I don't like oral sex. So I feel, I don't like this or I don't like that. And because, you know, their partner used to do this with an ex, then they think this person is going to like it as well.
Yeah,
you know, so I fell into that
trap before. I fell into that trap before.
I would much rather someone ask me. It may not seem sexy, but there's sexy ways of asking things. I would much rather someone ask me if I like this, or, you know, hint at certain things, or just use different love languages to be able to get to what I like. And on the other side of that, I think it's much better to just be vocal about what we like. And unfortunately, you know, a lot of traditionally women aren't as vocal about what they like or about what is going to give them pleasure, and so they end up faking orgasms and they end up being in relationships for years in which they never had an orgasm because they were too afraid to hurt their partner's feelings. And you know, that's really, really unfortunate, and I am such an advocate for like, stop faking orgasms.
Better stop that shit. You better stop faking that orgasm, girl. You better tell that man, buddy, it's not working.
It's not. Just like tap out. That's it. Done.
I feel like a lot of this has to do, not even to make excuse for males, but if you look at our society, it's been very much geared toward the pleasurement of men. It's been
absolutely,
you know, towards the penis, towards the phallus, and that is it. I'm very much for any of the men out there watching, if you have a girlfriend or somebody you're dealing with, ask her what she is into. Mm-hmm. I am very much, I've had women going up, but yeah, I want to know, what are you into? I want to know, so when we get there, I'm not doing things that I think that you will like. I'm not assuming, no, exactly. I want to know exactly what you like, so when we get there, we can both have the best experience possible. So,
and what I've heard, though, is, you know, a lot of people, and I do know, I don't want to talk about things in terms of men and women, but a lot of people have a hard time verbalizing what it is that they like. You know, like, oh, like, I guess I like this. I don't know. No one's ever asked me, for example, or they've never even thought about it. And so they just sort of think it comes naturally. That's where I think porn helps. Porn is able to show you other ways to be creative, other ways to touch, other ways to see things that you might not have even thought of. Absolutely. And now you're like, oh, okay. And there's shitty porn out there. I'm sorry to say, but there's just terrible porn out there. But there's such good, you know, as a teaching tool, I think that it can be really good. And so if you just are willing to ask, and if on the other side, you're willing to actually say it, because that conversation needs to be a conversation without judgment. Absolutely. If I say that I like, I don't know, I mean, it could be anything. There's so many kinks out there. There's so many, you know, different things that people like. If I say that I like something, I expect my partner to not judge me and be like, oh my God, you're so disgusting. Why did I tell you? There's no point in me telling you this. If you don't like it, that's okay, sure. But one of my favorite phrases ever, which I learned when I was in school, when I was studying sexuality, is don't yuck my yum. Don't say yuck my yum.
Don't yuck my yum.
Yes. Okay.
Like
yes.
That's what name's episode. Don't yuck my yum. I like that. I like that a lot. So the last question. Speaking of kinks, have you? Because you deal with, you know, heterosexual LGBTQIA. Has there been? I know we just said don't yuck my yum, but has there ever been a time where somebody has said something to you and you're just like, what the fuck? What? Like you did what? You like, what? Like, have you ever had any of those experiences where you're just like, y'all, is that what you're into?
I mean, I know it's funny to think about it, but and I'm gonna have to say a boring answer, but no. You know, I think that school, you know, and my life experiences so far have really prepared me for, you know, whatever you are into, I have to respect that. As long as it's not infringing on someone else's human rights, as long as you're not, breaking consent. Like if it's between people who are consenting of age,
Yes. Yes.
you know,
Yes.
then that's what you got to do. That's what you do. And so I might make a face. I'm gonna be like, ooh, you know, try to not make a face. But generally, you know, I can't even think of anything right now that I'm like, what? You know, and I think that, you know, it has been for me a really great experience to be a therapist, to be a sexologist, and to hear people's stories and to be able to hold people's truths and people's weight with them, help them carry all of this, because shame is such a huge thing on sexuality in our communities, and you will probably never explore one of your kinks because of shame to share with someone else. And I want everyone to be rid of shame. And so no, I haven't really heard anything that has really like left me like, oh my God, that's so shocking, you know. But again, what might be shocking to someone else might not be shocking for me. Or maybe I just haven't experienced it, you know, of someone just saying something and I'm like, because I would never ever yuck
that make them
someone
feel
else.
bad, but it's just like, oh, okay, all right, well, let's unpack that.
Yeah.
So Tiffany, please tell the people where they can find you at, where they can find you at, where they can contact you at. If you have anything specifically that you want them to know, please let the people know.
Sure. I mean, I think that take away from this whole experience, and thank you, you know, although our opinions might have differed in some things, I appreciate you being respectful. I appreciate you being open to other opinions, because I think that it is very sad when folks aren't open to just hearing other things. And so, you know, I really appreciate that. You're one of my dearest friends from back in the day. And so this is really enriching, really great. And for those that came online and heard us talk, thank you. You know, it's nice to be able to see people, even if they have different opinions. It's what it is. That's what this is for. And so I am always welcoming new followers, new folks who I can connect with on Instagram, which is my main platform, you know, which is this page. This is Tiffany Hall-Campbell _sexóloga, which sexóloga means sexologist in Spanish, by the way. And, you know, my page is all filled with, you know, social justice, racial justice, activism, sexuality, funny stuff. Just all of it, because I think we are able to be more than one identity at once. And intersectionality is a thing, and my identities intersect as your identities intersect. And so, you know, I think that it's important to be able to be open, and I am open to folks contacting me on Instagram. Always happy to share in different discussions, conversations, and yeah, thank you.
So even though I've been on a lot of live people, I don't know how to pin somebody's name, but this video
I don't know either.
I'm going to make sure that you have to do is go to my page and you'll be able to see her. You can follow Tiffany at, say your Instagram name one more time.
So my Instagram name is my whole name, my whole government name, which is Tiffany Hall-Campbell _sexóloga, which is a harder word for people that don't speak Spanish, but sexóloga means Sexologist. But honestly, if you just look for my name, you'll find me. It's fine.
Yeah, yeah. So Tiffany, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to come out and speak. I absolutely love this conversation. And I want this to be an example for people. Like, listen, there were some things that Tiff and I didn't agree on. And it's okay, because for different people, different experiences, we're not going to agree on everything. But, you know, you can have a difference of opinion, philosophy of a lifestyle of somebody, and still have respectful, progressive conversations. And
Yes.
that is one of the reasons why I started the Richie Moon Show, because I wanted to speak to people who had different perspectives than me, that had the same perspective than me, or people that I just found doing very interesting, thought-provoking things. I know high-level conversations and observations, that is going to be the new normal. These kind of conversations, these healthy, progressive conversations need to happen out in an open platform, and everybody can say their opinions, and you can feel different, and that's okay. And you can agree to disagree and still have a respectful conversation. So Tiffany, thank you so much for being a guest. I would love to have you on again. I would love, you know, when especially when you open back up and you start to hear some of these COVID stories, I would definitely love to have you back on so we can unpack and unwrap that. Once again, just tell people one more time, where can they find you at?
So one more time, y'all can find me on Instagram right on here. So it's my full name, Tiffany Hall-Campbell _ sexóloga.
Yes. Thank you once again. And I've been Mr. Richie Moon God. That has been Tiffany Hall-Campbell. This has been the Mr. Richie Moon Show. Everybody, thank you. So much gratitude. Love to everybody. Love to you, Tiffany. Thank you.
Thank
Take
you.
care
Thank
of each
you.
other. Have a good day. Go out there and get some of that sun, people. And you're going to tap out with your family. Everybody, peace, love, and light.
All right. Bye.